Hello and welcome to the news on NTA International. I am Dennis Adigunloye. Thanks for joining us. The headlines. Presidency says no change in the status of Senator George Akume as Secretary to the Government of the Federation. United States imposes sanctions on Sudanese military leaders for alleged use of chemical weapons. And President Bola Tinubu in St. Lucia on a diplomatic visit to evolve new era of diplomatic and economic possibilities between the two nations. The presidency says President Tinubu's visit to St. Lucia from the perspective of the government of St. Lucia is to pave way for the rekindling of the ancestral bonds, ignite a new era of diplomatic and cultural as well as economic possibilities between the two nations. A statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, says it is necessary to clarify the purpose of the visit in the wake of some Nigerians' uninformed comments regarding President Tinubu's historic state visit to St. Lucia. Like many Caribbean nations, St. Lucia has a significant population of African ancestry, noting that in the mid-19th century, a wave of immigrants from present-day Nigeria arrived in St. Lucia, bringing cultural and religious practices that remain today. In an era of global uncertainty, deepening cooperation between the global south, particularly between continental Africa and the Caribbean, has become imperative. Nigeria and the citizens of the Caribbean have strong people-to-people links. Citizens of St. Lucia are excited that President Tinubu has chosen to visit the island to strengthen their bonds with African nations with which they share ancestral links. Sir Darnley Alexander, a St. Lucian-born jurist who died on February 10, 1989, served as Chief Justice of Nigeria from 1975 to 1979. He first came to Nigeria in 1957, recruited as a legal draftsman by the Western Regional Governments of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. He became the Acting Director of Public Prosecutions in 1958. In 1960, he was appointed Solicitor General and Permanent Secretary of the Western Regional Ministry of Justice. In 1964, he was appointed a judge in the Lagos High Court, and in 1969, the defunct Southeastern State appointed him the Chief Judge. He later became the Chief Justice of Nigeria in 1975, succeeding Sir Teslim Olawale Elias. Sir Darnley was born in Castries, the capital of this island state, in January 1920. He held multiple honours, QC, CBE, GCON, and SAN. Another Lucian, Neville Skeets, an architect, contributed to the design of the Central Bank of Nigeria's corporate headquarters. Additionally, Sir Darnley Alexander's son, Michael, served as a medical doctor on the front line of the Nigerian army during the tragic Civil War. President Tinubu's visit aligns with Nigeria's 4Ds foreign policy framework: democracy, development, diaspora, and demography. As the presidency stated, the visit supports the African Union's 6th regional agenda, which identifies the African diaspora as a key development partner. Nigeria actively fosters cultural exchanges through collaboration in education, culture, and heritage preservation. Cultural exports, including Afrobeats, Nollywood, and literature, are already making significant impacts on St. Lucia and the wider Caribbean, enriching Nigeria's shared cultural landscape. The Gros Ile Street Party is arguably one of St. Lucia's most famous cultural events. It has been held every Friday for over 50 years. Now, Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Abdulrahim Mousavi, says Tehran was not convinced Israel would abide by a ceasefire that ended their 12-day war earlier this month. The army chief is of the opinion that they did not start the war, but have responded to the aggressor with all their power, expressing their doubts over the enemy's compliance with its commitment, including the ceasefire. 6 days into the ceasefire, Musavi was quoted as saying that they are ready to respond with force if attacked again. Chief of the United Nations nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, says concerns over Iran's nuclear program will not be solved through military action. Here is Kolo Mohammed with details.
Israel launched a bombing campaign on Iranian nuclear and military sites on June 13th, saying it was aimed at keeping Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, an ambition the Islamic Republic has consistently denied. The United States subsequently bombed 3 key facilities used for Tehran's atomic program.
Iran had a very vast, ambitious program, and part of it may still be there. And if not, there is also the self-evident truth that the knowledge is there, the industrial capacity is there. Iran is a very sophisticated country in terms of nuclear technology, as is obvious.
During a visit, German Minister of Interior Alexander Dombit to the site of an Iranian missile strike in Bat Yam in the outskirts of Tel Aviv, Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs Gideon Sa'ar said the international community must take necessary steps to deal with the Iranian nuclear program.
We see here the results of the barbaric Iranian regime strategy to hit shamelessly and deliberately civilian population centers with ballistic missiles. This is clearly a war crime, but the Khamenei himself, speaking a few days ago, admitted that this is what they aimed.
Alexander said there is no doubt that if Iran had nuclear capability, would use it against Israel. In other news, an overnight Russian attack on the city of Smilan in Ukraine's Cherkasy region has injured 6 people, including a child, and damaged a college and 3 apartment buildings. Recovery operations involving 81 rescuers and 30 units of equipment are ongoing. Kolo Mohammed, NTA News.
In the meantime, the United States has officially imposed sanctions on top Sudanese military leaders for alleged use of chemical weapons. Kolo Mohammed again reports that only humanitarian assistance will not be affected by these sanctions.
The sanctions, which include restrictions on U.S. exports, arms, and financial assistance to Sudan, will stay in place for at least a year. Sudan's army leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and his former deputy and Rapid Support Forces chief, Mohamed Dagalo, are already sanctioned by the U.S. The latest embargo was prompted by allegations of chemical weapons used by Sudan's military in operations against RSF fighters. A power struggle between Sudan's army in 2023 plunged the country into a brutal civil war.
Sudan is today the largest crisis in the world that we have, and it's 25 million people who go hungry. We have teams across the country, and that goes for many humanitarian partners, WFP and many others. And we experience incredible challenges to be able to reach those across Sudan. Sudan is the only country in the world today that actually has a confirmed famine.
The conflict has displaced 30 million people, creating what the United Nations describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Kolo Mohammed, NTA News.
Elsewhere, President Donald Trump's controversial spending bill has cleared first U.S. Senate hurdles. U.S. senators started debating into early Sunday on Trump's big, beautiful spending bill, a hugely divisive proposal that would deliver key parts of the U.S. president's domestic agenda while making massive cuts to social welfare programs. Trump is hoping to seal his legacy with the One Big, Beautiful Bill, which would extend his expiring first-term tax cuts at a cost of $4.5 trillion and beef up border security. But Republicans eyeing 2026 midterm congressional elections are divided over the package, which would strip healthcare from millions of the poorest Americans and add more than $3 trillion to the country's debt. Trump has pushed his party to get the bill passed on his desk for him to sign into law by July 4th, the country's Independence Day. Now, Indonesia broke ground on Sunday on a $5.9 billion mega project for EV battery production backed by Chinese giants CATL. This is despite NGOs raising concerns over a lack of environmental guarantees. Indonesia is the world's largest nickel producer, and it is trying to capitalize on its vast reserves, with a 2020 export ban spurring a domestic industrial boom of the key metal used in EV batteries and stainless steel. The EV battery project will include a $4.7 billion investment on the eastern island of Halmahera and a $1.2 billion investment in West Java. Energy Minister Bahlil Lahadalia said in a speech alongside the President. The second round of national immunization plus to curb the spread of polio virus and to protect children from the life-threatening disease has been flagged off in Osun State. Kayode Oladoshu reports that the program was flagged off in Ile-Ife by UNICEF, WHO and the Osun State government.
The second round of Polio National Immunization Plus in Osun is part of the holistic approach by UNICEF to achieve zero polio environment in Nigeria. For 4 days, health providers will go from house to house to administer polio vaccine to children from 6 months to 5 years across the state.
Osun State is also a priority state for us because there is a border state which we can see the virus is still there. The effort made here are crucial, not just for the children in the state, but for the goal of the global polio eradication.
All settlement communities, wards, local government should bring out their children that is eligible for them to uptake this oral polio vaccine so that we can break the transmission of polio in Osun State and in Nigeria as a whole.
Earlier, the team paid an advocacy visit to the palace of Obalufe of Ife, Oba Idowu Olaniyi Adediwura, and Ataoja of Osogbo to seek their support in sensitizing their subjects.
Encourage my people to come out and make sure that you come with challenge. You mentioned the other time that I will tell my chiefs to assist me to give them better education so that they'll be able to give us full support.
The second round of National Immunization Plus Day will end on 1st of July 2025. In Osogbo, Kayode Oladoshu, NTA News.
This is the news on NTA International. We'll take a short break. More reports in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. The presidency says there has been no change in the status of Senator George Akume as secretary to the government of the Federation. A statement by the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Bayo Onanuga, says President Bola Tinubu, currently in St. Lucia, has not made any new appointments. The information circulating about Akume's replacement is untrue, as agents of mischief fabricated it. And Secretary to the Government of the Federation has urged media organizations and digital platforms to always verify the authenticity of information before disseminating it, as spreading unverified or intentionally false narratives not only undermines public trust, but also poses a threat to the integrity of the nation's institutions. This is contained in a statement from the Director of Information and Public Relations in the SGF's office, Segun Imohiosen, reacting to the false reports on the removal of Senator George Akume as the SGF. He says Akume is still the SGF, as confirmed by the statements by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga. which reposes unwavering confidence in the capacity of the SGF to discharge his statutory obligation of formulating and implementing policies and programs of the renewed hope agenda of the administration. The need for holistic electoral reforms agenda ahead of the 2027 elections are key towards deepening the nation's democracy. Election stakeholders brainstormed the way forward at a roundtable and presentation of the report on the state of electoral integrity in Nigeria. Timothy Yusuf reports.
Gathered here are election stakeholders comprising the election management body, political parties leaders and civil society organizations community. Convened by Yaga Africa, a state of electoral integrity in Nigeria report was unveiled. The report, among others, recommended the strengthening of INEC's operational and financial autonomy, stakeholder engagement and communication strategy.
One of the recommendations we've done is to call on the National Assembly to conclude the process of the amendments to the electoral law as well as the Constitution. We need to conclude this process early enough to guarantee the legal instruments that will be used for the next elections.
Despite Nigeria's over 2 decades of democracy, stakeholders believe that the gap between elections and democratic accountability remains wide.
When the election is getting better, politicians take interest in trying to control the process. The problem we are dealing with is that political control and what it does to continuous improvement.
One of the reasons we were all looking at is the failure of the politicians who win the election to look back at the people after winning the election. They are not there for the people. So the people see that what's the point of coming to vote after all?
Discussion on the report centered on why electoral integrity matters, addressing weak links and rebuilding electoral trust. Timothy Yusuf, NTA News.
While celebrating excellence, we must always confront inefficiency and misconduct. Therefore, I charge all ministries, departments and agencies to institutionalize consequence management as a core pillar of public sector governance. This was part of President Bola Tinubu's message delivered at the 2025 Civil Service Week Reward and Recognition Ceremony. Haman Jabani reports.
The 2025 Federal Civil Service Rewards and Recognition Ceremony honored the unsung heroes who breathed life into public service. A total of 14 outstanding civil servants and 6 ministries, departments and agencies were recognized across 6 award categories. The highest honor, the Presidential Distinguished Civil Service Career Award, was reserved for civil servants who have served the nation for more than 15 years and above. Dr. Bahijatu Hadiza of Ministry of Environment received this award, which came with a plaque, a certificate, a short course abroad, a laptop, and SUV J4 2024 model.
Whatever I am asked to do, I do to the best of my ability. Even if I don't get another opportunity to do it, I know I did my best. And that's my approach to work from the time I started.
Representing President Tinubu, Secretary to the Government of the Federation charged civil servants to rededicate themselves to the highest standard of service delivery. Let us build a civil service where performance is not optional. Every diligent act, every well-executed policy, and every citizen uplifted bring us closer to the Nigeria we desire, he said.
Without accountability, recognition loses its meaning. Let us build a civil service where performance is not optional. Responsibility is enforced, and every officer understands that actions carry commensurate consequences, positive or otherwise.
Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, D.D. Esther Walton-Jack, speaks.
These awardees are not just workers. They are reformers, quiet reformers. They show up on time, meet deadlines, write policies, fix systems, and still manage to maintain a smile.
The event also featured a special award where head of the Civil Service of the Federation honored strategic partners, commending the Ike Omokoje Foundation for its unwavering support over the years. Hamad Jabani, NTA News.
Operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, have arrested an ex-international footballer along with his partner over an attempt to smuggle cocaine into Nigeria through the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, Lagos. Salwa Khalil Ibrahim reports on this and other anti-narcotic activities during the week.
The businessman was a frequent flyer, known for conveying clothes from Turkey to Nigeria and food items from Nigeria to Turkey. He was the first to be arrested upon his arrival at the Lagos airport on Tuesday, 24th June 2025. A search of his carry-on bag revealed 37 wraps of cocaine weighing 800 grams. Further checks reveal that an accomplice who turned out to be the former professional footballer who used to play for clubs in Brazil was waiting at the airport car park to collect the consignment from him. Another Europe-based businessman was on Friday, 27th June, arrested by NDLEA operatives at the Lagos airport while attempting to traffic 5,000 pills of tramadol packaged as malaria drugs to Spain. At the Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, NDLEA operatives on Friday, 27th June, intercepted a Maputo, Mozambique-based bar attendant. A search of his luggage led to the discovery of 17 cardboard-sized parcels of methamphetamine weighing 17.500 grams and 3 parcels of cocaine weighing 3.050 kilograms. Another passenger, 54-year-old, was also intercepted at the Enugu airport by NDLEA operatives. He arrived from Sao Paulo, Brazil. A liquid soap plastic container was discovered in his luggage. The substance turned out to be liquid cocaine weighing 1.250 kilograms. In Kwara State, a notorious female drug dealer was arrested on Wednesday, 25th June, when NDLEA operatives raided her base, where various quantities of skunk and tramadol were recovered. And a 72-year-old grandma was on Tuesday, 24th June, arrested by NDLEA operatives in Delta State. Several sachets of skunk packaged in retail sizes were recovered from her. In Abuja, Salwa Khalil Ibrahim, NTA News.
Child rights activists and critical stakeholders in the education sector are advocating a review of the Child Rights Act 2003 to ensure that the Nigerian child is protected from all forms of abuse and has access to education and other entitlements. Elizabeth Omori reports that this was at a briefing on the spate of abuse on children and homelessness.
The issue of school closures and child vulnerability has become a pressing concern in Nigeria. This media briefing was convened to draw government's attention to the growing threats facing Nigerian children. Stakeholders are urging the federal government to take decisive action to combat child abuse and neglect, particularly in states grappling with insurgency.
The children of FCT who have been out of school for 3 months, we pray that the president and the minister of the FCT to make it as an urgent need to ensure that these children return back to school.
Concerns were also raised around adoption processes, access to healthcare and security, all of which are critical to the welfare of the Nigerian child.
More efforts need to be doubled up to ensure that there's effective justice for children and families get justice for children who are sexually molested, children who are victims of trafficking, children who are working in the cocoa farms, working in so many, in the mining sectors, breaking, stones.
Parents and internet content creators are advised to avoid using children indiscriminately for content or personal gain, as this can expose them to predators. In Abuja, Elizabeth Omori, NTA News.
Let's now get a check on Monday's weather prospects. And that concludes the news on NTA International at this time. Thanks for being a part of it. I am Dennis Adegunloye.